Hi, it's Mr. Thompson. I just wanted to help you guys out with these environmental science labs and labs reports. I have a lot of students struggling, so I thought I'd make this video to help you out. Now, if you take a look on a screen, you'll be doing your environmental science class and you'll get to a lesson. For example, the Earth in Space lesson here. You'll do your vocabulary, your instruction, you'll do the lab lecture, and as you can see here, there's an assignment called directions and files for completing whatever lab the title is. In this case, it's the Seasons, Earth, Moon, and Sun lab. First thing you should do, click it. All right. Next thing you will see are the instructions. Now, attached to these instructions are 4 separate documents. First thing you should do is download each of these documents and open them one by one, especially the first one. The first document is the most important. This is what it will look like. It's called the directions for completing your lab and lab report. From this point, you should be able to follow these directions and complete the lab report accurately and do it well. So let's see what it says to do. So it says open and download the files. We already downloaded the directions. So we had to download the student guide, the lab report, and the how and what lab report files. And those are right here, as you can see. So you keep this file open as we go along, all right? So we opened up our files. Now what we have to do is submit a file here for this assignment. You see here it says add files. We have to do this because the only way I could give you guys separate directions for the lab report was to make these directions an assignment. So all you have to do is add an assignment here to be able to move on. As the directions state, you can upload any file you'd like. It doesn't count for a grade, but you must upload something or else you won't be able to get to the lab assessment where the actual lab will be. All right? So you add a file and submit it, all right? And the Edgenuity will allow you to move forward to the lab assessment. So here's the lab assessment right here. The student has already taken it. So what you see might be a little different. So you open up your lab assessment. And if you're reading your directions, it says, all right, well, we went backwards. Read the student guide. But first you can go into lab assessment. All right, and it says click view lab in the upper right corner. This is what I'm talking about right here. This is where you'll be collecting your data and actually be doing the lab. So go ahead and click. Your gizmo should appear on the screen. Just give it a minute. There we go. This is our Seasons, Earth, Moon, and Sun lab. Now we'll continue to follow directions. We should, all right, so we clicked and viewed the lab. Now we're going to use the student guide file to do this lab. And that was one of the files you downloaded, which should look something like this. All right, so you get some background. This is really important to read so you understand the lab. It gives you some vocabulary words, so in case you haven't been paying attention in this lesson, you can refresh yourself. And also it introduces some new vocabulary. But this is the key right here. Once you see the questions beginning, you know that all you need to do is follow the directions in the student guide. And as you read, they'll ask you to do things and make adjustments to this particular gizmo. There's views, different views, there's a timer, right? So that's where you're going to be collecting the data. And your data table's here. And there's another data table here. And also, you'll be answering these questions as you go along. Okay, so once you've done that gizmo, you open the gizmo, you filled out your entire student guide, then we can move on to the next step. Let's take a look. All right, so we used the student guide and used the gizmo. All right, we filled out the entire sheet. So when we're done with that, we want to open up the file how and what lab reports. This is what this file looks like. If you've taken a lab class with us at HHSO before, you're pretty familiar with this file. This lab report guide really points out what you need to include in your lab report. And also, for example, if you're a little confused about how or what to write for an analysis or a conclusion, this will outline everything for you. So you say, well, what about the hypothesis? What should I say about it? Well, this explains it to you. It explains to you what a hypothesis is and how to write about it, depending on the lab. And again, let me show you just one more time. The analysis, right, is a very specific part of the lab report, and so is the conclusion. The data tables, the analysis, and the conclusion are the three most important parts of a lab. In the analysis, I can see if you understood the data, and in the conclusion, I can understand if you were understanding the concepts that are driving this lab and lab report. Okay, so those are very important. So once you look over this and you got a feeling of what you need to include in your lab report, let's see what we have to do next. Open the lab report file, which should look something like this. So as you can see, I've already included everything you need. This is the format I would like you to send your lab report in. So here's, you add your title, your name, the class, name of the lab. And as you can see here, a place for the purpose of the lab, you write. Here's a place for the question for the lab, you write. Hypothesis, so on and so forth. Your variables, your materials list. For these environmental science labs, it's just the gizmo or your materials. The procedures, you can just use what was written in this student guide, all right, as your procedures list. So a majority of the items that you need to include in your lab report are already given to you, except for the data, analysis, and the conclusion. So here's your procedures. You add any of the data tables and information that you've collected in your student guide. So for example, in this lab, you include the data collected from questions 1, 5, 6, and 9. And if we look at our student guide, there's question 1. Oh, that might be a different lab. 1, 5, 6, and 9. It looks like I forgot one here, which would be number 2 as well. But any data that you collect, put it right into your data table section in your lab report. Very important. So once you're done filling out that file format for that lab report, all you have to do is send me both files. I'd like you to send the lab report, the one that you just finished, this one, that's formatted as a proper lab report, as well as the student guide that was included in your lab report. I like to have both files so I can understand and see how you are doing throughout the lab as you're doing the lab. The lab reports are really just more for formal scientific investigations, but it's kind of required of every student to create lab reports in lab classes. So after you're finished up, you sent them to me, you'll be able to move forward in Edgenuity. I'll take a look at your lab report and grade it, and I'll probably send you an email back. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.